What is happening out of the park, baseball fans, out of the park baseball community? How is everybody doing? I am Rich Grisham, very excited to be here. Very, very, very excited to be here tonight, sitting in the chair normally occupied by one Mr. Chris Jardine. But no, I am not the community and content developer Chris Jardine. No, I am actually Rich Grisham, and I am very excited to be here tonight with all of you good people. And I'm also even more excited because joining me tonight for this very special episode of This Week in Perfect Team is our good friend, former manager, Major League Baseball manager, former Major League Baseball player, current Major League Baseball commentator. Everybody knows who he is, and I'm just thrilled that he's here with us tonight. I am happy to welcome in Mr. Kevin Kennedy. Kevin, how are you, sir?
Rich, thank you for the nice introduction. I am doing great, and I'm glad to be here as well. How you doing?
I am doing great. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, absolutely, and to everybody out there.
Yes, and Happy New Year to everybody out there in the world of out of the park baseball and perfect team and the greater community joining us here tonight. So, yes, tonight is all about, here on This Week in Perfect Team, we are unveiling 6 brand new cards, some really good cards, and they're all based on some of Kevin Kennedy's favorite players that he either played with or managed or had relationships with. Because Kevin, if there's one thing that I've learned about you since I read your book called Twice Around the Bases and have been working with you on the Kevin Kennedy Show, it's that you pretty much know everybody in the game of baseball.
Well, I think I've told you before. That means I had a lot of years in the minors and and a lot of years in winter ball and a lot of
Right.
years, fortunately enough years in the big league baseball and then into broadcasting where I was able to meet and work with a lot of guys. But mainly it's because I think of 16 years in the minor leagues. That's where I met and managed against, played against a lot of the guys that I've become good friends with over the years. Little did I know, as a kid growing up in Los Angeles, that I'd get to know some of the Dodgers. I know we're going to talk about
Mm-hmm.
at least one tonight. Um, yeah, it's amazing. I'm very fortunate. I've had a really nice career. I'm a lucky person to do something that. I always told my mom when I was a kid that I was going to be somehow a professional baseball player or in professional baseball. And when she said, "Well, if you don't make it, you're a pretty good student. Make sure you get your grades." And I said, "Well, don't worry about that." I said, "If I'm not that a baseball player, I'm going to be a statistician for one of the major league clubs, preferably at the time." I said the Dodgers. And little did I know that baseball would become as analytical as it is right now.
Mm,
So it's really right up my alley, all the way
indeed.
around.
Indeed. And a bunch of stuff going on tonight as well during the show. If you have any questions for Kevin, at all about his years playing or managing or anything at all, fire away at any point in time. Kevin is always happy to take your questions, and we'll take
Absolutely.
care of that. Also, a couple of things going on. I want to make sure that I get to. Um, everybody watching probably already knows, but it's a good idea just to mention that right now, only until January 2nd, which is just a couple days away, until 1 p.m. on January 2nd, Out of the Park Baseball 20 is on sale for 75% off. That's just $4.99. Basically, $5 gets you Out of the Park Baseball 20. Chances are, if you're watching the show, you're already own Out of the Park Baseball 20. For that, we say thank you. But if you know somebody who you think would like out of the park baseball and who does not have it, this is a great time. The word of mouth from somebody is always much more powerful than any other way of learning about something. So let your friends know about Out of the Park Baseball 20 being on sale for $5, as well as, and this is probably a little bit more up the alley of the folks watching the show, just for those same couple of days left, we have Perfect Points on sale and historical packs as well. So historical packs are available until 1 p.m. Eastern on January 2nd. The historical packs get you all historical players as well as at least a single guaranteed gold player minimum. as well as the discount on Perfect Points. And something that we will be doing a little later on, we will be doing a giveaway. We'll be doing 2 giveaways. But also at any point in during this stream, right? So if you are watching this stream right now and you buy Perfect Points during this stream, we will match up to 10 people's purchases uh, of Perfect Points. So if you buy any on sale right now during the stream, I'll match up to 10, and then even after 10, we might still even do it. And it's not in order; it could be any 10. But a minimum of the first 10, or not the first 10, a minimum of 10 people who buy Perfect Points during this sale, and then you message me, either through Discord or Twitter, or however you do it. Just give me the proof of purchase if you can, and we will match it. So not only will you get Perfect Points discounted, you'll even get them matched, and we're also doing a giveaway of 25,000 to 2 lucky listeners between now and the end of the show. So lots of that stuff going on. One of our good friends, Kevin, just mentioned his username is Lobat. He joins us all the time. That you and he went to the same high school, Taft High in Woodland Hills, California. And he mentioned something that you and I have spoken about, that you got to play with Hall of Famer Robin Yount, who went from high school to Major League Baseball. He says, his name is Lobat, he says Robin must have been unreal at the high school level. Is that the case?
It's interesting when you're playing with a guy like that. You don't realize that he's a Hall of Famer. You kind of feel like you're all on the same level, basically, because I was a senior when he was a junior, and so he was always a year behind me. But he was always very good, and I just remember playing American Legion ball before his senior year, and that was then the summer ball that we played out here in Los Angeles, and the scouts were always coming to see him, and I had already graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, he must be pretty good. I kept talking. The scouts would give me a card, but the draft, I didn't get drafted out of high school, as it turned out, but they're always handing him a card, all these scouts of just about every major league team. And yeah, he was pretty good. But I got to tell you, I hit fourth in the lineup my senior year. He hit third. And it's funny because he didn't hit over 300 in his junior year. But when he was a senior, I had gone to San Diego State, and when he was a senior, he became the All-City Player of the Year, and he was the 3rd pick in the draft. Behind David Clyde was number 1, and I believe John Stearns was number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Robin was number 3 in the country. And I remember working in the summertime and playing baseball during the summer as I was going to San Diego State as well. And I heard it on the radio in those days in the 70s. You heard it on the radio. And they said, Robin Yount drafted 3rd in the country, blah, 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 blah. And I went, what? I almost dropped. I was working in a Formica shop. My dad's parents knew. I almost dropped the router, the electrical stuff I was working with. I almost dropped it on my foot and tore my foot off. I couldn't believe it. I just said, he's that good? Wow. Because, I knew he was the player of the year in Los Angeles, which was pretty darn good. But, of course, I didn't see him play his senior year because I was at San Diego State in my freshman year. But, I remember going to see him play, though, when he was 18 years of age. He played 1 year in the New York Penn League. And by then, of course, I was in my 2nd year at San Diego State. And in the summertime, about 8 or 10 of us would get in one of our friends had a big van. And we'd all go down and see Robin play the Angels. And I remember Robin hitting a double off of Nolan Ryan, and I couldn't believe it. And I said, wow, this is just too much. What it made me think of, Rich, was how far baseball was away from me. It made me think how tough it must be, because I couldn't imagine, being 18 years of age facing Nolan Ryan, who was throwing 100 miles an hour and throwing all those no-hitters at that time. And then him turning on a pitch, and I remember he doubled down the left field line in Anaheim, and I went, God, I guess he is that good. And little did I know that, I would be a trivia question. I'd be Nolan Ryan's last manager. So the 6 degrees of all of this just keep intertwining somehow. Yeah, it really is. If I could look back at the time I was 19 and Robin was 18 and thinking, let's see, that was 1974. I graduated in 72. Robin graduated in 73. He was in the big leagues in 74. So I managed Nolan 9 years later, 1993. or no, excuse me, 19. Let's see, yeah, 19 years later, right?
Okay.
So 1993 was when I first managed in the big league. So yeah, I did the math wrong there for a minute, but yeah, I couldn't imagine that. If you would have told me that when I was 19 years of age and I was 38, I was going to be managing Nolan Ryan, I would have said, yeah, okay, right, not a chance. you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but the career path took me that way. But yeah, Robin was a heck of a player in high school. Robin was. I'll tell you about Robin too. One more thing about Robin.
Sure.
His brother Larry had gotten drafted by the Houston Astros a few years earlier. His brother was actually bigger than Robin, big, 6'4", about 220 pounds, high draft pick, and he got hurt. He was warming up. He was with the Astros, and he got hurt warming up in the bullpen in San Diego. I remember Robin was down there going to watch his brother. It was September of the particular year that I'm talking about. And in the bullpen, he hurt his arm, and he never got an appearance in the big leagues.
Mm.
Larry Young. His closest appearance was warming up in the bullpen. He got a call up to the big leagues, but he never made it to the big leagues. He hurt his
Okay.
arm and never was able to pitch again. And that's the story. And so Larry really took care of Rob. In fact, the same guy that drafted Robin with Milwaukee was the same scout in Milwaukee at the time that had in Houston that had drafted Larry. He was a Houston scout when Larry got drafted, and then a few years later, when Robin got drafted, he had moved over to the Milwaukee Brewers, and that's who took him, the same scout. So he had, and then Robin would always go back every summertime and work out with the AAA team with his brother for a couple of weeks, and when he was playing at Oklahoma City, which is where Houston's AAA team was at that time, back in those days in the late '60s, early '70s. So yeah, he had quite a background of help, but his talent, he really was, and he's into this to this day. He's into this with race cars, motor cars, motorcycles, motorbikes. He was into all that before it became fashionable in the days, 20 years later. And so Robin, Larry was afraid he'd get hurt. So as a senior, he made him stop riding motorbikes and doing the dirt races that he would do because he was a daredevil. Robin would do jumps and everything. He was afraid of nothing. And if people that might remember Robin when he retired, one of the presents that he got a Harley Davidson. Of course, Milwaukee, it's where the company is based, but that's what he wanted. He wanted a Harley Davidson, and that's what his teammates got him for his going away present after 20 years in the big leagues in Milwaukee.
Wow.
So,
Not bad.
yeah, special guy.
Not
Special
bad.
guy. And he's a guy that never changed either, I can tell you, Rich. Never changed his personality. Always was the same and never let it get to his head. He was awesome. Still is awesome.
Well, all right, let's jump into this here. Let's get going. So, as I mentioned tonight, the cards that we're unveiling tonight are a really interesting pack, and obviously a lot of Kevin Kennedy's favorite players. In his book, Twice Around the Bases, Kevin, you go over who some of your favorite players are, and favorite hitters, and favorite pitchers, and so on. And obviously, a lot of those players are already in the game. So. It's not like these are the definitive top six of Kevin Kennedy's, but these are players that, in particular, you mention an affinity for in your book, and we've talked about them on the Kevin Kennedy Show podcast and so on. So let's just jump right into them, shall we?
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the first card tonight under Kevin Kennedy's favorites is the great Maury Wills. So we have a historical all-star. This is from 1965, Maury Wills. And as you can see here on the screen, Maury is, in this particular year, his speed and stealing and bunting and his defense are simply amazing. He's also got very good contact and very good avoiding strikeouts. So this 1965 Maury Wills historical all-star card, nice way to start with his content. You have a particular affinity for Maury Wills, don't you, Kevin?
I do. I grew up in the '60s, and I'm of age where because Maury Wills. I remember the first game I ever went to as a kid, 7, 8 years old, was when Dodger Stadium opened. And Maury was the MVP in 1962. He stole 104 bases that year and actually edged out Willie Mays for the MVP of that particular year. And to this day, Maury says when he talks to Willie, which is every once in a while, he says he still teases him about that speed beat out power back in '62. And Mays, of course, will say he should have won it because the Giants ended up going all the way and beating them 2 out of 3 in the playoffs that year anyway, because they both tied at the end of the year. The Giants caught them and surpassed them. But that first game, I saw Maury play, the excitement of when he would steal bases, everybody would yell, "Go, go, go," and the stadium of 56,000 at Dodger Stadium would echo. And Maury used to tell me that he could hear it. It would just, when you hear the fans yell like that and tell him to go, everybody in the ballpark knew he would steal. And so he felt like he had to go, even though everybody knew he was going to run, the opposition knew he was going to run. They tried to pitch out on him all the time. They tried to, in San Francisco, when he would play up there and play the Giants, he said they used to wet down the dirt at first base, and they would try to spike him at first base, whether it be McCovey or Orlando Cepeda. And he said they tried everything they could to stop him from getting a good jump and stealing bases, because he was only caught 13 times that year in 1962. And Maury says a few of those were hit and runs. He had to mention that to me when I got to know him later on. But yeah, he made me a baseball fan. Him and Vin Scully and Koufax and Drysdale were the ones. But Maury, because of his speed, I was just intrigued by it, what speed created. And of course, we know today's game is a power game, but there's still some guys that have a lot of speed and do intrigue you with the running game.
Mm-hmm.
And guys that do both, maybe a Lindor, you take a guy like that is capable of stealing 30 and hitting 30 home runs. But the speed aspect in those days, he changed the game for the Dodgers. I mean, without Maury Wills, they don't win those championships. And that's why I feel, because he's a 286, I believe, lifetime hitter, and because of the World Championships and the couple of Gold Gloves that he has, and the numbers you mentioned from '65, which they won in 7 games. They won that World Series against the Twins. I just feel Maury should be in the Hall of Fame. And a quick sidebar on Maury is that I got to know Maury when I was in the Dodgers system in the '80s as a minor league manager. Maury came back to the Dodgers. They hired him back. He had gone through some off the field issues, by his own admission, some drug issues, and he had done speeches on that. And the Dodgers hired him back, and Peter O'Malley, the owner of the Dodgers at the time, hired him back. And I got to know Maury, and we became good friends. And I said to him later on, if I ever manage the Dodgers or anywhere, if you want to come, I'm gonna hire you, Maury. Well, when I got the job in Boston, not Texas, Boston, I'd already managed in Texas, but when I got the job in Boston, Maury had lost his job for some reason with L.A. I don't know if he had a relapse or what it was, but I told Dan Duquette, the GM, I said, we need a base running guy, especially in spring training. Let's hire Maury Wills. He's available. And Dan said, fine, no problem. And we hired Maury in the years I was in Boston. He was there, and he wasn't there full time, but he was there in spring training. And he would be there when we came out and played the Angels or played on the West Coast. And he would be in a Boston uniform. And to see Maury in a Boston uniform didn't look right, because I always think of him as a Dodger, but it didn't look right when he got traded to the Pirates either, or when he was with Montreal as well. But that was one of the proudest things I could do, was hire a guy that was down on his luck. And to this day, Maury's still going strong. He's not teaching anymore. He's living in Sedona, Arizona with his wife. I talk to him about once or twice a year, and he's doing fine, but he's just not going to spring training anymore. And he's living a great life with his family, and he's happy and he's healthy and he's doing good. So I'm really fond of Maury, because I got to be good friends with him, and I can't believe it when I think about being 8 or 9 years old and just seeing Maury on TV and getting excited. Even at Dodger Stadium, the same thing, that he stole bases, that I'd get to know him, and let alone be a great friend of his to this day. It's still, I shake myself still when I talk about that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The other thing,
Yeah.
and we've spoken about this on the Kevin Kennedy Show, which, by the way, everybody, if you're not listening to the Kevin Kennedy Show, you should. It's part of the Out of the Park Baseball Podcast Network. It comes out every single Thursday. It's on iTunes and Google Play and all of that. And it's Kevin and I just talking about baseball from the past, the present, and the future. But one of the things that continues to just strike me about Maury Wills is that he played in the minor leagues for a long, long time. He spent,
Yeah.
I think you said 8 years in the minor leagues, Maury Wills, right?
8 years. 8 years.
Unbelievable.
He was behind Pee Wee Reese. Yeah, and it wasn't until finally when the Dodgers moved out from Brooklyn to the West Coast, he finally got an opportunity, and he did play in the '59 World Series where they beat the White Sox. That was in the old L.A. Coliseum, and before Dodger Stadium opened up in '62. And then he finally took over permanently. When Pee Wee Reese retired, and he said Bobby Bragan, who had made him a switch hitter, and he's forever thankful for Bobby Bragan, and Al Campanis helped him a lot too in becoming a good hitter. And he was a contact hitter, and you mentioned the contact numbers in '65, and his thing was swinging down. Now a lot of hitters in those days, they weren't swinging down; they were swinging through the ball. They weren't necessarily swinging up, but they weren't swinging down.
Mm-hmm.
I was taught to swing through the ball.
Right.
But Maury was taught to swing down because if he swung down on the ball and had those Baltimore chops, as they call them, those high hoppers,
You get right on
he was
base.
so fast he could beat it out. Yeah,
Yep.
he could beat it out, and that's why he didn't hit many home runs. And if he hit the ball in the air, it was an out for Maury. He was not a power hitter by any means. In fact, they call him Mouse. He was so small, but boy, could he run. He could really fly. And Bobby Bragan taught him to be a switch hitter and said, if you hit left-handed, you're going to have 2 more steps toward first base, and that's going to that's going to help you get to the big leagues. And so Maury worked on that for year after year, and finally, it panned out where he got to the big leagues. And because he was a switch hitter, he became like I said, almost a 300 hitter. A couple of years he was at that number, but overall a 286 big league hitter. So it was because of being a switch hitter, and he thanks Bobby Bragan. Bobby, we lost Bobby a few years ago, but he would always go to a special event that Bobby held. It was in Dallas for Bobby. But Dallas is where he lived when I was there, Bobby Bragan. So there's always people that help you along the ways, and he says Bobby Bragan was the number one guy that really helped him.
Indeed. And by the way, a lot of you in the chat have already noticed we started our giveaway. If you hit ! ticket, you'll be entered. You can only enter once, not more than once, for one of the 2 25,000 perfect point giveaways. We're going to run that for another few minutes or so. So if you haven't got your ticket, go ahead and do that. All right, let's get to it. The next card is a gold 83 overall. This is Billy Williams from 1970. Played for the Cubs in 1970. And again, this is an overall 83 gold. A lot of good stuff going on in this card. Some excellent contact, some really strong power, really good avoid strikeouts. He doesn't have a lot of speed, Billy Williams, but he does have really good awareness of stealing and good base running. And he can play a solid left field for you. Again, a solid all-around card and a gold Billy Williams. What are some of the things that you like so much about Billy Williams, Kevin?
Oh boy, you named it right there. First of all, I got to meet Billy when the Dodgers would have their Hall of Fame camps. They would have fantasy camps at Dodger Town twice a year, but every couple of years they would have a fantasy camp, Hall of Fame camp. And so not only would they bring former Dodgers Hall of Famers like Roy Campanella, for example, or Duke Snyder would come, but they'd also bring Hall of Famers, guys that were in the Hall of Fame. And I remember, and I got to work those myself, and Terry Collins and Dave Wallace, a couple of young minor league managers and instructors that we were at the time. We got to work those camps, and we were always on one of the teams with one of the Hall of Famers. One of the Hall of Famers would manage it. Another one would be the pitching coach, and another one would be somebody like myself, where I would do a lot of the physical work, so to speak. Do a lot of the throwing and batting practice, et cetera, and help the Hall of Famers. Well, I was on Billy's team one time, and what a nice man. He's one of the nicest men I've ever met in the game. I'll just put it that way. Just a gentleman, just a real gentleman, and not bodacious at all about what he did. It was Ernie Banks and Billy Williams and Ron Santo. We were always talking about those three, and
right.
I'm glad Santo finally got into the Hall of Fame because what a great guy he was. But when I got to meet Billy, and every time after that I saw him in spring training, he was always like I was his best friend. That's how I think about Billy Williams. Is like, wow, he remembers me of all people. He'd
Right.
see me from afar. He'd say, "Hey, Kevin, hey, how you doing?" And I went, "Oh man!" And he would remember the times that I was at Dodger Town with him at the Hall of Fame camps that the Dodgers would have. I'm going back to the mid '80s now in those camps, mid to late '80s. Some of those, because I left the Dodgers in '91 to go finally get my chance in the big leagues. So I was there from '82 to '91. So they had those camps for all the years I was there. And Billy, I got to meet Billy, but I knew him as a player because as a kid, uh, playing games, I knew all the guys. I knew both leagues very well. I mean, I followed baseball. I mean, so much. I mean, we
Hmm.
had the Dodger Stadium, and of course, when the Angels came into being in the early '60s, there, they were playing at Dodger Stadium for a while until they
Right.
got their own stadium in Anaheim. But Billy Williams, to me, was exactly what you said. When I'd watch him play, just a sweet swinging lefty swinger. Um, could play the corners, like you said, left or right, mainly left, but just a good hitter. I mean, he'd hit you 25 to 30 home runs, drive in big runs, hit good pitching. He would hit the aces. He could hit the big, the number one pitchers. And that was tough to do in that era because those guys are facing, and you're facing guys like Koufax and Drysdale and Johnny Padres
Oh,
and
come on. They weren't that good. Oh,
you
wait.
know.
Yeah, no, those are only three of the best pitchers ever. Listen to these numbers in 1970 for Billy Williams. A slash line of 322, 391, 586. He hit
Yeah, that's awesome.
42 home runs and 129 RBI. This is in 1970. This was pitching dominant times, right?
It
Um,
sure was. Yep.
137 runs, 205 hits, and a wins above replacement of 6.6. That is quite a season. Quite a season.
Oh yeah, he was something else. I mean, as you said, the 42 home runs. Think of Billy, or I didn't think of Billy as that type of a power hitter because he didn't do that all the time, but he was capable of doing that.
Right.
And I remember reading his minor league numbers. In fact, I did this about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months ago. I like to look at the big leaguers when we're talking about WAR, and I see their WAR. I want to see what they did in the minor leagues. And I looked at
Mm-hmm.
his minor league numbers, and I went, wow, I could see why he moved up fast to the big leagues because he had some huge minor league numbers before he got there.
Mm.
And he was just like you say, he wasn't a base stealer, but those guys, a lot of those guys in those days knew how to run the bases. You had to know how to do everything. He wasn't a burner, but if he was asked to do it,
Right.
he could pick his spots and do it.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. And just a clutch hitter though. And I just remember that sweet swing. You always think of lefties with the sweeter swings and
Mm-hmm.
right-handed hitters
Oh, sure.
for some reason. But if you think of a guy like Fred Lynn, if you remember Fred Lynn, he
Oh,
had a
sure.
great swing. Fred was at a USC, and I remember seeing him in college. He was before me. And everybody goes, God, that's just a sweet swing that he has, just this fluid swing. Well, that's what Billy Williams had. I just remember that sweet, fluid swing. Nothing overbearing. It wasn't a hard, violent type of swing like I think of a Gary Sheffield when I think of a hard swing, a violent swing, guy that I know pretty well. But Billy just had that fluid swing, and boy, the ball just jumped off his bat, gap to
Interesting.
gap too. A lot of doubles, a lot of home runs, a lot of extra base hits.
So we have a couple of good questions here. I want to get to the third card quickly, and then we'll take a break and answer a couple of questions. So let's go to the next card, shall we? The next card is from from the year 2000. This is Gary Sheffield. 2000, Gary Sheffield played for the Dodgers. Overall gold 85 that year. He hit 325, 438, 643 slash. Are you kidding me? 43 home runs, 109 RBIs, and 101 walks, and an overall 6.1 WAR. Very, very, very high power, in particular against righties. He, again, knows not a lot of speed, but very smart on the bases with stealing and base running. Excellent contact as well. His avoid strikeouts is a little lower than you'd like to see, but he had a really good eye, particularly against left-handers. And again, Gary Sheffield is never going to win a Gold Glove out there, but you can put him out in left field. He's probably better as a DH. But boy, that year 2000, Gary Sheffield, he hit and he hit and he hit, and then he kept on hitting.
Oh
What are
man.
your thoughts on Gary Sheffield?
Well, I first saw Gary. I managed against him when he first signed. He was in Helena, Montana, and I was in Great Falls managing 3 years in a row there, 84, 5, and 6. And I believe Gary was in the 85 class. And when he got drafted, and his team, they had Greg Vaughn was hitting behind him. This is rookie ball now. And then that's the first two guys they had. And I remember they had a really good team, but I saw this guy, and I knew he was the number one pick in the country, and I knew he was the nephew of Doc Gooden and all that. But he always had that same swing that he had till the end, till his very last year. He always cocked that bat, the way he did, and that slight little jerk. And when I asked him about that one time, and he said, I do that because the bat feels too light to me. And I've never thought he would answer something like that. I didn't know why he really cocked the bat like that and did it that jerking like they did. He said, but the bat feels too light for me, so I felt like I had to do that so I didn't get out ahead of the ball too soon. So I thought that was an interesting answer when he said that. But that's why he did that with the bat, the way he jerked the bat like that, cocked the bat like that. And he had the quickest bat at that
Oof.
time.
Oh yeah,
Probably the quickest bat in baseball that I can remember, for sure. In the
he
years
did.
that he signed, I mean, 85. And I managed against him all the way up because as I moved up to Double A, we were in the same league as the Brewers, and that's who he signed with originally, of course. And so I saw him all the way up through Double A and Triple A, and then, of course, he finally got to the big leagues rather quickly. He was a shortstop when he first came up.
Right. That's right.
But that bat speed that he had, I mean, he could just flat out hit. He was
Yeah.
a hitter from day one.
That's right.
I mean, when he was a rookie, Rich, he looked the same as when you talked about those Dodger numbers. That's how I remember him.
Right.
And he could hit anybody's fastball. I remember one in particular. He hit a home run off of. He wasn't playing for the Dodgers, but it was against Gagne, and Gagne was throwing 98 miles an hour. Then had the good changeup. Well, that was the year Gagne was the Hall of Famer.
Sure.
Or not the Hall of Famer, the Cy Young winner.
Yep.
And he turned that 98 around to dead center and killed it. Just hit it out. And I went, man, just blazing bat speed. That's what I remember about Gary. And then later on, after he was out of the minor leagues, they moved him to the outfield, of course.
Right. Okay, we have 3 cards left to go, but before that, we have a couple of questions. So let's back up for a second and let's ask one or two of these questions. The first one comes from our guy Lobat, who chatted a little earlier. And he said, for Kevin, as a minor league manager, you coached many guys who became Major League Baseball All-Stars. However, what player did you manage or play with in the minors that you thought was going to be a top player in the majors, but that just never broke through?
Probably Greg Brock. I thought Greg would be better than what he became with the Dodgers. I played with Greg in AAA in '82. And he had to replace Garvey when Garvey became a free agent, and that was tough. And Greg did end up having a nice career, especially when he got traded to Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
But he was supposed to be the guy. He had 42 home runs in Albuquerque, and I know the air in Albuquerque is part of it. But I thought he had enough power to be a 35-plus home run guy his whole career, and he never turned out to be that guy. He had 20 with the Dodgers a couple of years there, and they finally traded him for Tim Leary. And Tony Muser, actually, I talked to Greg a few years ago. We both got inducted into the Albuquerque Hall of Fame the same year, so that's the last time I saw him. It was a few years ago. And we talked about that. I said, whatever happened to you, Greg? Why did you start hitting for average better in Milwaukee? He said, well, Tony Muser actually helped me a lot. He said, I tried too hard to hit home runs with the Dodgers, and I ended up striking out too much, and everything was an uppercut, and I just couldn't do it. He said I relaxed a lot more when I went to Milwaukee. That's why his numbers were actually better. But he didn't play that long as he could. I thought Greg was going to be a 15-year, 16, 18-year major leaguer and probably hit 350 home runs, and that didn't turn out. So that would be the guy that comes to mind right away that I played with.
Got another question from another great member of our community. Magus, he says, Mr. Kennedy, viewing the game as a spectator now, have you noticed anything significantly different between how games are managed today and how you managed games during your time with the Rangers and the Red Sox?
Oh boy, have I ever. That's a whole other show.
That's true. Good
Yeah,
point.
I mean it's apparent that managers are getting information from upstairs.
Right.
That lineups, there's no doubt in my mind. Well, I actually know some things, so I don't want to reveal everything I know,
Right.
but there's lineups that are being given to managers now, and they have to select from maybe two or three. Um, some clubs don't are as analytical. I know that Dave Dombrowski said that he never once told Alex Cora at all, what lineup he preferred, but I can tell you that the majority of teams today, they do, when they say collaborate, they want to collaborate. That means that they're helping the manager write the lineup out.
Mm.
And managers today, if you want to manage and you go through the interview process, that's part of the interview process. I know that for a fact. And they're
Right.
just going to have to say, hey, if my time had come now, it probably wouldn't bother me. But my time was, 25 years ago. And so I think of it then as, when I did the interview process then, it was, Tom Grieve was the general manager, said, Kevin, do you think you should pick the coaches or that I should pick the coaches or we should each pick a few of them? And I said, well, obviously you're the general manager. You should have as much input as you want. But I said, in reality, I think the manager should be able to pick his coaches because based on the scheme that you believe what type of game I'm going to run and what type of team we're going to have, that I should be able to pick the coaches that will implement that type of system. And he liked that answer. That actually helped get me the job. Today, if I said that, I probably wouldn't get the job.
Mm.
That's just to give you an example.
Right.
So yeah, it's changed a lot, and when I see the game, it's changed a lot. Obviously, the shifting has changed a lot. Although you know, when we had Mo Vaughn in Boston, teams would shift on him, but now they shift on everybody,
Right.
depending on situation and counts and everything. So it's different there in that regard. Um, but the managing part of it, yeah, I miss seeing the managers actually have the control of running a game because it's obvious to me when I see certain moves being made in the postseason, like the Dodgers
Mm-hmm.
against the Nationals. It's pretty obvious to me that there was a script going on there,
Right.
and you can't script a game. You can have a game plan,
Right.
but you can't script it.
That's
You got
right.
to be ready for for something that might come at a certain time. You can't script that and say, well, at the eighth inning, this is the guy automatically,
Right.
because it doesn't work that way.
That's
The
right.
game will dictate how you manage. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
So,
good. We've got a few more good questions lined up. So keep those coming. In the meantime, let's now move ahead. Let's get to the next card. So we've already done we've done Maury Wills, we've done Billy Williams, and we've done Gary Sheffield. 3 cards left. This is some good stuff. All right, the next card. And again, these are all now live in the game right now as we speak, available. And the next card is a peak Reggie Smith, a diamond, 91 overall Reggie Smith. You look at his career, he hit 287, 366, 489 slash. He hit 314 home runs, drove in 1,092 runs, scored 1,123 runs, and over 2,000 hits, 2,020 to be specific. And looking at his attributes, my goodness, could he hit lefties? And he has amazing gap power against lefties and terrific power. He can hit lefties, he can hit righties. Excellent contact, excellent gap power, excellent standard power, and a really good eye. His avoid strikeouts is a little lower than you'd like. And again, another guy who doesn't have a lot of speed, but is smart on the base paths. And he can play 3 positions. He's a much better right fielder than center field or first base, but you could probably train him up a little bit. So the 4th card of Kevin Kennedy's favorites is a peak diamond 91 Reggie Smith. Again, I know you have a big affinity for Reggie Smith, Kevin. What are your thoughts on him?
I do. Well, first of all, he's the best hitting instructor I've ever been around, and to this day, he's got accompanying him and Ryan Lair, a young hitter that he's worked with, and now they're partners together on what's called the Pure Swing. People probably see it on Twitter a lot. Reggie's got a lot of clinics going on, and he's done he's done masterful work with working with the hitters. But I got to know Reggie personally with the Dodgers in the '80s when he came back to the organization as a hitting instructor. And he was the guy that really convinced Piazza not to quit, because Mike quit because he wasn't playing in A-ball enough, and he took his uniform and went home. And Reggie's the one that went to his house, got him back into the game, and helped him become the hitter he became. That's why Reggie was invited to the Hall of Fame speech that Mike had when his time came for the Hall of Fame. He gives Reggie all the credit for teaching him the correct way to hit. And Reggie, by the way, learned from Ted Williams. Reggie doesn't teach swing down, and Reggie doesn't teach swing up. He teaches swing through the ball at the angle it's coming from, which is up, which is from the mound. That's what Ted Williams believed in, if you read his book. So
That's
Reggie
right.
was a disciple of Ted Williams. So it comes from the angle from the pitching mound. And in those days, it was 15 inches, not 10, when he first started with the Boston Red Sox. And he got to know Ted because he played with the Boston Red Sox. Reggie did. And he was a shortstop at first. Then he became a center fielder. And as you said, Rich, he was a great right fielder. By the time he was with the Dodgers, I mean, he probably had as good a right field arm in his days as anybody that I can think of in right field in the National League. And he could flat out throw. And man, could he hit. You're right. I mean, a lot of people feel like he's a borderline Hall of Famer. If those
Yeah.
numbers were put up today, that you could make an argument for him as a Hall of Famer. That's how good he was. And then he went to Japan, which is also interesting about, and learned how to other things how to hit too later on and in his teachings, because Hasada Hao is with him, and and taught him how to use a sword. True, a sword. That's how Hasada Hao learned how to do the balance act with
Right.
his front leg, and actually would hit these thin papers in half, and at the angle that they would go through, they would swing like they were baseballs. And he
Mm.
taught Reggie how to do that. And it's a long story. It's kind of hard to visualize, but that's how also some things that Reggie learned from Sadahara how to hit. And Reggie proved this later with Dr. Job, and took all of his information and they put it into the clinic. And basically, he's got a master's degree in hitting, and with the
Mm.
approval of the doctors that he's worked with. And so it's not what he teaches isn't what his philosophy is. It's what your body does.
Right.
That's
Right.
why he's the best hitting guy. But as a player, especially when he came to the Dodgers, when I was obviously a Dodger fan still, when he came from St. Louis to the Dodgers, man, that was the piece they needed in those years in the '70s. And for Reggie, of course, coming from LA and being a Jackie Robinson fan, that was huge for Reggie. Reggie's a
Mm.
good friend of mine to this day. And he's in Encino, which is right around the corner from where I'm doing this. And he hosts a lot of clinics just a couple blocks away from me right now. And he's going to do it as long as he's healthy, and he's healthy.
There you go.
He's a great hitting coach.
Two
But what a
two
great player.
two cards left. Before that, we have another good question. This is from Phil in the chat. He says, he asked Kevin, did you manage Tom Henke? My dad grew up across the street from him, and we keep in touch still. He's a great dude and threw harder than heck. Can't remember if he was before you were in Texas.
He was in Texas before me, and Doug Rader managed him in those times, and then he left and went to Toronto, and then when he was a free agent, he came back. And I did have Tom for a couple of years in Texas, and I asked Tom. I'll just tell you a quick one on Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Tom, we don't have a real setup guy. We got a couple of young guys. I said, are you okay with pitching in the 8th inning for a 4-out save sometimes? He said, sure, no problem. Well, I used him 18 times in '93 in the 8th inning. He saved 17 of them, and he saved 40 games.
Wow.
Yeah, he saved 40 games. We finished in second place, and had we not had him, we wouldn't have finished second that year, or even been in the pennant race. That's how good he was for us that year with that split. Yeah,
Wow.
he was nasty. Good guy. Yep.
Okay, 2 more cards left. One of the two is Don Sutton, 1972. Don Sutton, a right-handed pitching starter. Here are Don Sutton's numbers from 1972: 19-9, a 2.08 ERA, 272 and 2/3 innings pitched. You don't see that numbers like that very much.
No.
207 strikeouts, a sub 1 whip, a 0.913 whip, and a 6.6 WAR. And just looking at some of his numbers, his stuff is fantastic against both lefties and righties. Solid movement, solid control. He has 5 pitches: a fastball, a curveball, a slider, a changeup, and a screwball. And he has excellent stamina, and really just again a dominant, solid 91 overall diamond starter. Don Sutton, 1972. Again, I know you're a big fan of Don Sutton. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, first of all, he had one of the best curveballs you ever want to see too. That was his real go-to pitch when he first came up to the Dodgers as a youngster, you know. And then as Koufax retired in '66, which surprised everybody, he was only 30, and Drysdale, of course, a few
Right.
years later, end up that Don became the guy. Don was the main Dodger left. You know, yes, they traded for Claude Osteen and Andy Messersmith was there for a while, et cetera. But Don was the guy, and so Don was the guy we all of us that were Dodger fans followed him everywhere he went. And of course, later in his career, he bounced around a little bit, but he did get those 300 wins. But I remember all of his stuff that he always had a bag of tricks with him. You know, he could, like you said, the screwball he could fool you with. He always had great command. He had that nice overhand delivery with that great pull of the curveball straight over the top. It was really his out pitch in the years that I saw him, man, the go-to pitch. Good guy. I got to know him more as a broadcaster, although I got to tell you a quick one. Many years ago in the San Fernando Valley, when Nautilus became big back in the 70s, a lot of the guys living in this area where I live were ball players, you know. So a lot of guys, Robin Yount worked out in there, Ron Say worked out in there, I was working out in there, and I ran into Don Sutton one time in there, and I was a little bashful because I was in AAA with Baltimore, and I was a little bashful going up to him in a way because, you know, he'd already been with the Dodgers for several years. But I went up to him anyway. I said, if you need a catcher, not knowing that, of course, you could work out at Dodger Stadium and throw to Steve Yeager or whoever, you know. But I said, if you need a catcher to throw to you, I just live around the corner. I could catch you anywhere. We could go to Pierce or college or wherever. He said, oh, thanks, Kevin. Nice meeting you, this and that. And he said, I think we're okay, but if I ever do, thanks a lot. I'll give you a call. But I thought about it later, and I said, of course you didn't need to throw to me. You go to Dodger Stadium and throw the guys there, you know. But that was my first meeting of Don Sutton. But he's a great guy, and just has been a great broadcaster for a lot of years too. But the big thing that I remember is the curveball. Really, his curve is a hammer for a curveball.
Yep, indeed. Okay, so we are going to close out the giveaway. We have one card left, and oh my gosh, what a card! You guys, this card is going to blow your mind. But before that, I'm going to close out the giveaway. If you have not entered a ticket, type !ticket. I'll give you another 30 seconds to do that. We're doing a giveaway of 25,000 perfect points tonight to 2 lucky listeners. And as I said earlier, and I'll get back to it here, we are also, in addition to that, we are also doing to celebrate our perfect point sale, at least 10 of you who buy perfect points during this stream will match it. Amazing. It's like somebody said earlier, it's like a 401k in perfect points. We'll match it for at least 10 of you who buy perfect points during this live stream. All you got to do is hit me up on Discord or on Twitter and let me know. So, all right, we are going to let me get to the spot where there's Don Sutton. Let me close down the giveaway again. Last second here for you to enter the giveaway. I'll give a 10-second count here. Okay, that is going to be it for the giveaway. So let me stop that now if I can do that, and then we will draw the winners in just a moment. But before we do that, we are going to unveil the card that I have been so excited to unveil ever since we started doing this. Okay, so are you ready, chat? I hope you're ready, because the last of the 6 cards of Kevin Kennedy's favorites, these are cards that are available in the game right now today. A peak perfect Bruce Sutter. Ladies and gentlemen, look at that. Look at that. You've got Bruce Sutter, who has peak stuff, who has incredible movement, who has incredible control, who has a fastball, a slider, and a splitter rated between 97 and 102. Oh my gosh, peak Bruce Sutter. Kevin Kennedy, when I was a kid, the first closer that I can ever remember just being on a completely different level than everybody else was Bruce Sutter, and this is a representation of him. Talk to me about Bruce Sutter.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be with the Cardinals in Major League Spring Training for the 1982 season, and Bruce Sutter was there. Whitey Herzog, when he took over, he got all the guys that he wanted. He made a lot of trades and a lot of signings, and you got Ozzie Smith in a trade for Gary Templeton, and you had Willie McGee for Bob Sykes from the Yankees, and et cetera, et cetera. But Bruce Sutter was the guy that I really wanted to catch, because I came up in the Baltimore system and got a chance to catch, Jim Palmer and Mike Flanagan, et cetera. But I really wanted to catch a guy that had that kind of a split-fingered fastball, and I got a chance to catch him a lot in that particular spring training. And I'm going to tell you, I could catch it because that's one thing I could do, but I certainly couldn't hit it. I mean, it was unbelievable to catch that guy, to see that thing roll right off the table and just the bottom fall out of it. And that's what a split-fingered fastball did. A lot of people don't know exactly how it's held, but you split your fingers between the two seams of the baseball, depending if you go through the narrow seams or the wide seams. But if you go the narrow seams, and then a lot of people, it's the thumb that Roger Craig used to talk about when he used to teach that to his guys, to guys like Mike Scott, et cetera, that you move your thumb accordingly from the bottom to the side, and that's how you get the movement. And Bruce Sutter would do that. And I'm telling you, that guy, he was unbelievable. And of course, in '82, that's when the Cardinals won it all. They won the World Series. They beat the Milwaukee Brewers in that particular year. And Bruce, of course, was a big part of that. But that's why the split-fingered fastball was a pitch that I know guys got away from it when Mariano Rivera was popular with the cutter in the '90s. But I never understood completely why guys got away from throwing a split, because it's still an effective pitch. Some guys still throw it. I know that there's still some pitchers that throw the split finger, but you don't. It kind of got away from people. Some people thought, well, maybe it hurt your arm too much, but we've heard that with sliders as well. We've heard that with a lot of pitches. If you throw it wrong or you throw it too many of them, but I'm telling you that pitch. That is one pitch that is truly unhittable. I know that people say the cutter is, but I'm telling you, that pitch is a tougher pitch than hitting a cutter, because a cutter at least is on the same plane as your bat, and you got a chance. This thing goes off the plane of your bat. It goes straight down, and when you may see it as a fastball, or you will see it as a fastball, and then the thing just comes up, and it's just like it's standing in time right in front of you, Rich, right across the plate, and then the bottom falls out like an elevator shaft. And that's what made him so phenomenal. And I'm glad that he got in the Hall of Fame. He's always been a real humble guy and a great guy. And when he finally got in, I was real happy for him. But I was proud that I got a chance to catch him one spring, so I got a chance to really know how the movement really worked for him, and it was phenomenal.
Well, all right, that is what we've got this week. New cards, Kevin Kennedy's favorites available in game now. You've got a silver Maury Wills, you've got a gold Billy Williams, a gold Gary Sheffield, a diamond Don Sutton, a diamond Reggie Smith, and a perfect Bruce Sutter. Kevin Kennedy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. You have the website is kevinkennedybaseball.com. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what that is all about, and how they can be a part of kevinkennedybaseball.com?
Yeah, it's a sub site. It's not overbearing, but I'm doing a lot of video on there. I'm going to be doing, especially when we get into the warmer weather now. Even in Los Angeles, it's cold as heck right now, so I haven't been outside doing videos. But I'm going to do lessons on that. I've got a lot of audio. I've got a lot of video feed. I've got partnered with you. You can get the Out of the Park Baseball on the site
Yep.
as well. But you got to go to kevinkennedybaseball.com to check out the cover page. And there's a free trial in there as well. Check it out and see if you're interested. But I'm pretty much updating things and keeping things relevant every day. And of course, I have a lot of friends in the game and a lot of contacts. And so the information that I'm giving and breaking down is not from somebody else's writings that I'm reading. It's from the sources, from people that I know, and from my own information. So just check it out and see if you have interest in it. And again, it's kevinkennedybaseball.com.
Fantastic. All right, and the podcast is the Kevin Kennedy Show. It's available on the Out of the Park Network. Comes out every single Thursday, and so be sure to check that out as well. Kevin Kennedy, thank you so much for joining us this week. This was a lot of fun. We should do this again sometime.
I'd love to, Rich. I enjoyed it a lot, for sure. I'd love to do it.
Fantastic. And so once again, everybody, just as a reminder, in case you did not know, we have Out of the Park Baseball 20 on sale, $5, 75% off, just until 1 p.m. Eastern on January 2nd. So just a couple days left. And of course, as I mentioned, Perfect Points. If you bought Perfect Points during this live stream, message me. You can get them matched. And before we go, the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to award our winners. So the winners, the two winners, the first of two winners tonight for the giveaway. Let me get to that here real quick. The first winner is 84 Cubs. Congratulations, 84 Cubs. You are a winner of 25,000 perfect points. Message me or with your username on Discord or here on Twitter or something like that. All right. And the other winner is Tarzan Boy. So Tarzan Boy and 84 Cubs, you guys both have won 25,000 perfect points. So enjoy that. And enjoy the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. Once again, thank you, everybody, so much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. In about 15 minutes, we're going to have the next episode of The Big Rich Machine. So as Alex Murray and I continue to conspire to rebuild the 2019 Cincinnati Reds, we're going to put them into we're going to build them into a contender. So give us about 15 minutes, and we'll be right back with that. In the meantime, Kevin, once again, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Happy New Year,
pleasure,
sir.
Rich. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, and everybody else out there. Thanks a lot, Rich. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, everybody. Stick around if you want for the Big Rich Machine. Otherwise, thank you so much for being a great part of our community. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you all very soon.